Hello project and program managers, this is Pat Cleary and I'm going to give you just a brief overview of this risk list file system. As you can see, this is comprised of a number of sheets, 11 to be exact, and each of these sheets performs its own function for the risk list file. Of interest to us is these three sheets here. The risk capture data sheet, and this is where you would capture all your data for each of your risks that you would normally capture in a risk capture form. You know, you're familiar with your risk statement and your context and your scoring and other fields. These are all entered into rows, each row for each risk, and associated with its risk ID. And then I've also added on here for your status logs. Each risk has its own series of status logs. So for each risk, all your status logs can be exported into this risk list file from your risk capture forms for all of your risks. And they could go all the way down as far as they need to go for all of your risks. The same thing for the mitigation and research plans. When you add a research or mitigation plan and in a risk capture form, and then you update it and import it into this risk list file, it will add all those mitigation steps associated with each risk, and it will organize them however you need, and they will be associated with only that risk, those mitigation steps, and all that data will be added as far as you need. And so you see all three of these sheets comprise all of your project or program's risk management data. Of the reporting functions and the risk charts that are generated, probably the most common and popular is the one that shows the 5x5 matrix here. We would use this just as an example of one of the reports. When we click Update Table, it would fill in all the risk information straight from our risk data from our first three sheets with all of our risk data. It would then fill in all that information into here, into these, and then generate our chart. And then we could click Copy, and then we could put it into Word or into PowerPoint or whatever the medium we need for reporting our risks and our risk information. The scorecard sheet defines the details behind the risk scores. As this risk system was designed with respect to NASA's Constellation program, a 5x5 risk matrix is used, and each likelihood and consequence score from 1 through 5 is assigned a specific meaning. And this is what you would refer to when you're trying to score your risks, trying to quantify the risks. Another feature that I've added here is a risk capture form generator. This will let you select the risk here, however many risks you may have. In this case, I'm using just my example risk. I have a Star Trek risk that I've added. Obviously, it's a fake risk because it's for Star Trek. But if I wanted to generate a risk capture form purely from the data that I have here for the risks, I would simply select it here, and then I would click Generate Risk Capture Form, and I will demonstrate that right now for you. You can see it's opened it, it's added the mitigation plan data from the risk list, it's now added all the status log data for that risk, and all the risk capture form data. All of this has now been added, including the closure information for the risk. And we've just created a risk capture form. And we can go the other way too. When we click on Update Risk Information in a local risk list, if I click on this button, it will then open up the risk list and then populate it with all the data that is inside of this risk capture form. So in this way, they're cross-compatible, and you can create one set of data from another file. I'm not going to save it. I'll just close that out now. What I've also added to the risk capture form generator page was I've embedded a risk capture form in here. And the reason I did that is so that if you just have the risk list file, you will always have the risk capture form template with it. So you really could get started with your risk program right away using this system with only the risk list file. I've added a sort of a bug tracker page, and it isn't pretty, but it's very simple and it does everything you need. What we do is you just log on here. If you find an error or an opportunity for improvement, you simply list it on here, put the number associated with it, and give some of the other information. Give your initials, date it, And then whenever they're addressed, that's when I fill it in dark gray here, whenever it's closed out. And then I put the date closed and any sort of supporting notes that might be for any additional information. And in this way, we could track the improvements. We should expect that, like with any software or any application, there's going to be bugs and there's going to be opportunities for improvement. And this will be our way of tracking it for this Excel risk list file. Furthest to the right is the Administrative tab. And this was added for mostly a placeholder for administrative functions. In this case, it does serve one important purpose, and that is to give the local path, file path for the risk list and the risk capture form templates. Both these paths have to be specified in order to use the automated functions of the risk list. And this is where you would put them. So on your computer, you would put all the way from your, usually C is your main hard drive, or wherever it is on your network, on your local network, and then you give the full path to the file. And when you put those both in these fields, then you should be able to fully utilize all the automated functions, including the report generator and the import-export functions. And finally, to provide further guidance, I've added a user guide on here, and this just gives some of the details of the features that are in the risk list file, and then how to use them. And you can refer to this if you need to remember how to do anything, or obviously if you need to learn how to. And that is the risk list file, and that's your overview.